Alright, step 1, here it is at T2 and 4. I'm going to turn this engine until it gets to the camshaft position as detailed in this picture. So let's go to T1 and 3. And right there is T1 and 3. The cam lobes are facing inward, just like in the diagram, but let's think about what we're doing. So this is the left side, rear cylinder, cylinder 1, which is now at top dead center, but of the exhaust stroke. If I were to continue rotating the crankshaft, the intake cam lobe will continue to press the two intake valves further down. The exhaust cam lobe is still coming up, but not quite free of the two exhaust valves. All that means cylinder 1 is not at the top of the compression stroke, but rather it's at the top of the exhaust stroke. So we can't adjust the valves here for cylinder 1, but this is where we have to start with the cam timing. Now that you have verified the mark on the crankshaft is aligned with T1 and 3, and you have the cams positioned with lobes inward, then here is when to check rear cylinder cam timing to the crankshaft. You have to look straight down across the level surface of the head where the cover sits, and you're trying to line up the horizontal lines imprinted on the camshaft sprockets to that flat surface. And here there's a thing called the parallax error that shows how different perspectives can give different results. That's especially true here. With the crank at T1 and 3, you see how the lines like really line up? It can't just be kinda close, it must be exact, okay? For the rear cylinder, if the cams were removed, then install the oil pipes, tensioner guide, and camshaft holders. Then it says to install the two upper camshaft sprocket bolts. Now here's my issue with this manual, is that it shows you, from this crankshaft position, both cams are clearly drawn with a large crayon showing a visible sprocket flange on the exhaust cam and no such flange for the intake. So you can install this bolt right now, and you can install that bolt. But there are two more bolts underneath that aren't mentioned. So this is what you do. Install the upper bolts finger tight only, then install the lower bolts after finishing up with the whole front cylinder. Alright, so the next step is to rotate the crankshaft to T2 and 4. Here we follow the crank timing marks very carefully. The manual does not say to spin it around and install those other lower sprocket bolts first, and then go and find the next T2 and 4, or pass T2 and 4 a couple of times before you stop at one. This T2 and 4 is the first to come around directly after establishing the position of T1 and 3 to be at the top of the exhaust stroke for cylinder 1. Coming up to the front cams, I expect to see the cam lobes both pointing kind of upward and inward, but right away I see the cam lobes are doing the opposite. Someone must have tried doing some work in here. So the reason it's backfiring and not starting is because the front cams are installed 180 degrees out in relation to the rear cylinders. To remove the sprocket bolts, either remove the cam holder or turn the motor. I'm going to mark the upper bolts just to help me keep track of them. They'll stay installed while I turn the motor around to access the two lower bolts. As we return to the front cylinder camshaft installation position, I'll take a moment to mention that this very scene is a classic reason why you can't just check timing of the front cams without first and also doing the same for the rear cylinders. Marking the chain and both sprockets now before they've had a chance to move will eliminate the guesswork of that step during assembly. Here is the cam chain tensioner. Down inside, under the tensioner base plate, is the adjustment rod running vertical and the lever rod that grabs onto the rod. Install upper sprocket bolts finger tight only. The lower bolts will always install easy if the uppers aren't tight. To disengage the tensioner, move the lever up and then hold it while also pulling out on the tensioner arm under the exhaust cam sprocket. If you do it just right, the lever will lock onto the rod when the chain is loose. Glad to see the chain hasn't moved on the sprocket. Now to release the cam chain tensioner and get our tension back, I'll turn the crankshaft backward from normal and pop. There's our tension. If you previously removed the rear cam sprocket lower bolts, they can now be installed. Rotation felt smooth through a couple full cycles, so I'll just stop it here at some random spot in the 720 degrees of unique engine positions. Now I want to go back through and see if what we did is still correct. I'm going to mark the direction of this cam lobe pointing roughly that way. How to check cam timing from the top. Step 1. Turn the crankshaft clockwise, watching the marks on the flywheel and the position of the cams. We are looking for the T1 and 3 mark on the flywheel and for the cam lobes to point inward towards each other. Here is T1 and 3 on the flywheel, the first time it lined up anyway. The number 1 cylinder cam lobes are pointing outward. All 4 rocker arms have play, which means all 4 valves are fully closed, making this top dead center, or TDC, of the compression stroke for cylinder 1. While we're here, it's important to note that if you want to try adjusting valve clearance on Honda's dual rocker per cam lobe system, the procedure requires separate feeler gauges be inserted under both rockers at the same time while making each adjustment, or else the actual clearance will definitely be off. All those details covered in another video. Here is the top center of cylinders 1 and 3. The camshafts say it is the exhaust stroke of cylinder 1 and a compression stroke of cylinder 3 where you can adjust those valves. Step 1 of the cam timing, to find the origin. Step 2, once you have the rear cylinders 1 and 3 all tucked in, rotate the crank and closely watch for the very next time T2 and 4 shows up. Then make sure the cam lobes are pointed correctly, then check the front and rear marks of both cam sprockets that they align with the head. According to this graphic, the front cam sprockets will need to be marked for where they align with the head. The tensioner guide can be installed either way.